Oh, where did we leave off? Oh dear. You all can hear me muttering, especially those of you online. I just have to get back to where we were. Meditation. Okay. So thank you everyone for returning, either whether in person or over Zoom. Especially for some of you, this is not always the most convenient time of the day if you're in different time zones. So thank you all for joining. Perhaps this session is at a more convenient time. I don't know. At any rate, we will begin this afternoon with the Vajradhara lineage prayer. And in interests of time, we will just do the Vajradhara lineage prayer. We've already done the request for teaching this morning, so that will be sufficient for now. Du som shera kunchen garma ba che je chön ye ju par zi nan tan de ta ca san pa so salam chaya che nganye pe nyan me donggen tam ka ju la so so ka la man jubazina nanda lo shen lo gongje kan ba so ba shin se no na chang je pa dan sen de ta che be gom che na ye go shen ba me ba je lo mo ge gom jing go so ba shin meng a te che ben la ma la jun so de gon chen na je men che ye je o yang me gom je ngor je so ba shin kan sha to be ngor so ma de ma je de ga jo be Gom Chema Gom Tan Lo Nam Do Ngo Che Gor So Ma Shin Ji Yang Mai Ji Yang Sha La Manga Roba Chare Gom Shen La Korde Me Lo Jewa Gundo Yanda Lamatam Rame Chugi Pa Jing Satalam Jiyenda Nazonen Dorje Changi Yorto Sho Dorje Changi Gong Han Yorto Sho Omen Jin Jibonan Dun Gunjing Nirazan Jagongos and Zeba Padan Lamadan Balaja Zalu Adan Zemlin Namje Lotus Adore Jinjin of the Zola Chelam Doro Jinjin of the Zolam Drabazo Jinjin of the Sol Truba Yeshu Charwa Jinjin of the Zol. Please bless me and all beings that our minds become the Dharma. Please bless us that the Dharma becomes the path. Please bless us that the path dispel confusion. Please bless us that confusion arises wisdom. Now, please think to yourselves that we must bring, no matter what, all of our mothers, all sentient beings throughout space, to the state of perfect happiness or lasting happiness, the state of complete perfect Buddhahood with the 5 wisdoms and 4 kayas. That it is for the sake that we are studying, listening to the Dharma this afternoon. And in this way, please listen to the Dharma with the motivation of bodhicitta. The Dharma that we are listening to is the way of the Bodhisattva by the great being Shantideva. And within that work, we're discussing the 9th chapter, the chapter on Prajna, which has a section on the benefits of Prajna. There's a section on the characteristics of Prajna, the section on the meditation. Then there is the refutation of clinging to things. And then finally, there is the benefits of emptiness. So we are in the 4th section, the refutation of clinging to things. Clinging to things as being real. And this has 2 parts. Saying that there is no proof that things actually exist as they appear to us. And then there is the second part is saying that there is proof that they don't. There is disproof of things, that they don't actually exist. There is actual logical ways to prove that they don't exist. And so of these 2, we are discussing the second, and this is among the 5 different logics of the middle way, the interdependence, neither single nor multiple, blocking the 4 alternatives of arising, the Vajra splinter, and the refuting the arising of either the existent or the non-existent. We are in the discussion of the Vajra splinter. So we're talking about here again in the Vajra splinter, there are the different parts. Though usually we talk about not arising from self, not arising from other, not arising from both, not arising from neither. Shantideva takes it in a different order. So we've already spoken about how things don't arise from neither self nor other, which means that they don't arise without a cause. Everything that appears to us, all appearances have causes. Those causes are relative. They're like illusions and dreams. They're not real, but we can see that everything arises with causes. But the causes are not. We've already discussed the section of saying that the things don't arise from the self, from other, and then they also don't arise from self. So here we are in the section on describing that on saying that things do not arise from themselves, which is primarily talking about the positions of the Sankhya school, as we spoke about this morning. So this morning, when talking about things not arising from themselves, we've come to the point of refuting that the cause abides within the result. Let's get that going. That looks like we have it all working right. Okay. So, refuting that the result arises in the cause. We're in the second half of verse 134. So if you say that the result resides within the cause, this is to assert that things arise from the other, in effect. So what the Sankhya school says is that the cause, or that results are present in the cause in an unmanifest form. For example, if you have a lump of clay, there's a vase in there that's just waiting to be let out. Maybe some potters feel like this. You've got a lump of clay and you feel like there's something. Sometimes sculptors feel like there's a stone and they know that the sculpture is inside the stone. They say that there really is something there. It's just not manifest yet. And so when the result arises, it's just being made manifest. It actually already existed in the cause. So the pot, the jug, or the vase, or whatever you're making is already existent in the clay. So basically, the result is present in the cause. It's not manifest, but it's there. And it's really there, they say. And so what this is saying is, first of all, Shantideva argues that in effect this is saying that they're arising from something other themselves. They're arising from their cause. If you say something non-existent cannot arise, it doesn't exist. A non-existence instance arising amounts to this despite your wish. So the reason why they say this is that something that doesn't exist cannot arise, as we discussed this morning. So they say that it's already existent, it's just not manifest. So when the clay is made into a pot, then the pot is manifest, but it was already present in the clay. So it's not that. So they said the reason they say this is because if it were to not be in the clay, then it would be non-existent and then arise, which makes no sense. So, but Shantideva says, well, if you are saying that it's an unmanifest pot that then becomes a manifest pot, then it's even if there's a big difference between an unmanifest pot and a manifest pot. And you're basically saying that something that didn't exist before, which is the manifest pot, is arising from something else, the unmanifest pot that's present in the clay. So basically they're saying that it's not arising from itself, it's arising from something else. It's arising from something that is not manifest, despite their assertion. And then there's the absurd consequence that the cause and effect are simultaneous. In other words, what you're saying is that pot is in the clay. If you say that the result is present in the cause, then why would you bother to try to make results out of it? If the result dwells in the cause, then eating food is eating feces. What is the result of food? It's what comes out tomorrow, right? Actually, this is a very useful contemplation. Remember, if we get attached to food, remembering that all you're eating is just as cause of tomorrow's bathroom trip. So if you say that you're eating the food, that the present cause is present in the food, then what you're eating is in effect eating the feces. And for the price of cotton cloth, you should buy cotton seeds and wear them, right? You don't have to buy fabric and make clothes, just paste a few cotton seeds. I don't know how you do it. Get a few cotton seeds and wear them instead. The Sankhya's don't like this argument. They say, but people don't know that. People don't see it. So they don't see that. So just ordinary people don't know it, but it really is, that's how it is. So since they're deluded, people don't see it. Ordinary people are stupid. They don't know the nature of things. But you can see that even even people who know reality, but those who know reality present this. And there are some people who know it. I think that if we were doing this in present day, we'd say, but those who know reality with our little quotation marks, right? Those Sankhya people, you Sankhya yogis who know reality, you don't wear cotton seeds. I mean, you make your cloth and then you put it on after it's been made. Where are your cotton? Why aren't you wearing cotton seeds? So why do they not see it? If worldly folk lack valid knowledge, then seeing the manifest is not true. If what people see is not real, then when you see what is manifest, the manifest results is not seeing the nature of things, is what he's saying. In other words, worldly people would be completely deluded. What they're seeing is not true. The manifest is not real. Now, here's the problem. Then the opponent says, basically, to read the verse, and they're teaching that they object to this, saying, if valid cognition were invalid, then would not what is known be false? Therefore, in suchness, meditating on emptiness is illogical. So if in that way, because if everyone's knowledge of the world is invalid, then you can't know anything to be true. And if you can't know anything to be true, then when you meditate on the nature of everything being emptiness, that also, in suchness, is not true. And therefore, meditating on emptiness is illogical, they say. So that's the objection. So Shantideva next wants to say that this is actually valid. The cognition of the non-existence of the object is valid. In other words, saying that to understand that worldly objects do not exist the way they seem to us, to say that is a valid thing to say. And his response is saying, since contact with imaginary things, their nothingness is not apprehended. Therefore, the unreality of a false thing is clearly false. So it's only without making contact with imagined things. If you don't make contact with or somehow know or use the things that we imagine to be real, the bouquets of flowers that I've been showing you all weekend, or or anything that we're analyzing, if you don't have some relative appearance to examine, then there's no way to find their emptiness. Because you have to examine something and say, oh, this bouquet of flowers it really isn't a single thing. And the flowers within it aren't single things. The petals aren't single things, and the atoms aren't single things, and there's really nothing there. And if they're not single things, then it's not a collection of multiple things either, because there are no single things to make into multiple things. And so, wow, this is just doesn't have anything true. If you get to that, then if you don't have the bouquet of flowers to analyze that, then there's no way you can figure it out. So we have to use the things that appear to us in relative experience in our daily life. The ordinary appearance is the basis for our examinations. So unless you do that, then you can't find them and find that they are indeed emptiness. But it itself, since the thing itself does not truly exist, and therefore its unreality, its lack of existence is also not true. So you also cannot say that things do not exist. The unreality or the non-existence of a false thing is clearly false. For example, if you were to talk about, let's use a traditional example, rabbit horns, right? Rabbits do not have horns. There are no rabbits with horns. So rabbit horns do not exist. But the idea of rabbit horns not existing is just as false as the idea that they do exist, because it's only in relation to existence that you can have non-existence. Existence and non-existence come together. So only if non-existence is the negation of existence, if what is negated is not there, how can there be its negation? So in reality, you come to the point where ultimately there's no existence, there's no non-existence. You also can't say both, you can't say neither. You're free of all extremes. This is the middle way. It's not existent, not non-existence. When you look at the world, if you look at like this bouquet of flowers, it's not something, it's not nothing. You can't say it's both. It appears, but it is not truly existent. So this is the actual true nature. The emptiness of all phenomena is not something, it's not nothing. It's beyond our ordinary conception. It's free, and if we can truly see this, then we can be liberated. And so this is the antidote for clinging to things. So it's like, for example, as the example that Shantideva gives is, thus when a child dies in a dream, the thought that they do not exist negates the thought that they do exist, and yet it also is a fiction. If you have a dream, in your dream you have a beautiful child, and it's wonderful. You have the thought in your dream, I have a child, and then in that same dream the child dies. Then that negates the thought that you have a child. The child is gone. And yet that thought that the child is gone is also a fiction, because it's just a dream. When you wake up, you realize that both thoughts were just dream thoughts. Neither was real. And so you neither cling to having a child nor cling to not having a child, because it was all just a dream. So similarly, when we can see that things do not exist, but they also don't not exist, then we give up all clinging to things as being something or as being nothing. There are actually two sorts of clingings here. You cling to things as existing. You can cling to things as not existing. Of these two, actually, clinging to things as existing is better than clinging to them as not existing. And the reason it's as, was it Sarah who said? Clinging to things as existing is as stupid as a cow. To cling to them as non-existent is even stupider than that. Because if you cling to things as not existing, then you're going to give up, and you're going to not pay attention to any of the relative reality, the things that we see in the world. You won't be able to function. You'll think that what you do has no effect, that it doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want. It's not going to affect anything because nothing exists. You'll have a nihilist view, which in the end will make you engage in actions that will create even greater suffering. And not only that, because you have this nihilistic view, you will be unable to work towards liberating yourself. So it's important for us to understand that even though the things of this world are like dreams and illusions and don't have independent existence, they appear to us consistently because of karma, because of cause and effect. We can see this with the natural world around us. Like plants are a great example. You know that if you have soil, seeds, moisture, warmth, and sunlight, that your flowers are going to grow. If they're in a good location, you know the causes and conditions will produce the flowers. We know that certain things are going to make produce certain causes, produce certain results. This happens consistently. And so we can see that even though the act of, any unvirtuous act. And so for most of us, the ones we're most likely to engage in are the unvirtuous acts of speech, of lying, abusive speech, divisive speech, chatter, and so forth, or of sexual misconduct. These are the ones that I think are most likely now. Even though you may know that the action that you're doing is illusory, that the person you're doing it to or with is illusory, that the result is illusory, the result is still going to occur. And if you do it, you will experience the illusory result, but because it is all just a thought to you, and you haven't realized the nature, you are going to experience that suffering as if it were real. So it's important still to be very careful of our ethical actions, despite the fact that everything is emptiness. Sure, things are empty, and they are, in a sense, fiction. But it's really important for us because at this point, we just have the idea things are emptiness. We don't actually experience them as emptiness. So we're going to suffer more. And the actions that we do that are unethical are going to have a bad effect on other people who don't even have the idea that they're emptiness. And they're going to experience suffering. So it's just going to perpetuate the cycle of suffering for ourselves and others. So it's incredibly important for us to really be careful of our actions, of karmic cause and effect, of being careful that we always keep a good motivation, that we try to always act out of love, compassion, the motivation of bodhicitta, the wish to benefit all beings as much as we possibly can. And to take control of our mind so that we don't act on the negative motivations of greed, hatred, desire, and so forth. We need to be very careful about our actions, understanding at this point intellectually that things are fictions, but it's fictions that still we experience as if they're being real. It's like you're in a really good movie. When it's in a really good movie, you can be there, you can experience it, and you can feel the feelings and so forth, just as if you were experiencing that, where it kind of feels like, the character jumps off a cliff. If the cinematography is really good, then you can sort of feel like you're falling off the cliff too. Well, it's the same, but we don't realize that we're in a movie yet. So if you don't jump off cliffs, even if they're fictitious. Don't do your own stunts. Just don't do stunts, right? Be careful. So just because things are fictitious doesn't mean that they don't happen in relative truth. So this is really important. It's the union of the relative and the ultimate. We have to always understand that things appear consistently to us. So we need to be very careful of how things work in the world, yet understanding that the nature is not solid, not real the way it appears to us. There's no real me, there's no real other, and yet we are attached to each other. We are linked to each other, and this is very important. So it's really important for us to keep this in mind, to remember the ultimate and the relative are not separate. They are linked. You can't have the one without the other. And so back to Shantideva after my digression. So teaching what is validly realized is the next topic. Having investigated thus, nothing without a cause exists, and nothing dwells in the conditions individually or combined. It does not come from somewhere else, nor does it stay, nor does it go. Though the deluded say it's true, how does it differ from an illusion? So when you examine this, we have the examination of things. When we have the examination of things, you investigate this, and we find that things nothing exists without a cause, and but nothing dwells in the conditions individually or combined. So things do not exist independently within the cause or within the conditions. When you examine the cause, they don't come from somewhere else, nor do they stay someplace or go. Nothing is as it says. So though the deluded say that it's true, how does it differ from illusion? So it's kind of like the things that appear to us appear because of causes and conditions, but it's similar to like an illusion or what you do on your computer in a computer game. There are causes and conditions that make all the computer game. Oh gosh, none of us are. I mean, not many of us are in the computer game generation, I have to say. A few of us maybe, but still it's kind of like a computer game. You can do all sorts of things in computer games, but it's all a result of, the software, the hardware, and your actions producing an image on the screen. But it's really and so our own daily life is the same. It's appearing due to causes and conditions that we can't control. So the next section is the fifth of the great logics, about the logic that things that refuting the arising of things that exist or that don't exist arising. So it's refuting the arising of the existent or the non-existent. This means to say that something that exists doesn't arise, and something that does not exist cannot arise. And so the two parts here, the nature of the logic and the meaning that is validly realized, what you learn from this. The nature of the logic is, first, that like an illusion, things do not come, go, or endure. What an illusion emanates, and that which causes emanates, scrutinize where it is they come from and also where it is they go. This is like when you look at a mirror. So you want to get up and you want to shave or wash your face, and you're looking in the mirror. You have the condition of there's a mirror, there's your face, and there is some light. And because these conditions come together, the image of your face appears in the mirror. But if you look for that image of your face in the mirror, you cannot find it separately from the mirror. Does it exist separately from the mirror? But it isn't the mirror itself. It depends upon the causes and conditions. And so it's the same thing with the causes that come together. Because of the cause of the mirror, the causes of the mirror, the face, and the light, you have an image of the face in the mirror. Similarly, if you have a lamp that's filled with oil and has a wick, and you light the lamp, then it will give lamplight. So the lamplight is, in effect, exactly the same as your mirror, as your face in the mirror. So you have to scrutinize where they come from, and also where it is they go, the causes and the results. Where do they come from? Where do they stay? Where do they go? So things are unreal, like reflections. So that which is seen when something else is present, but not when it is absent, is fabricated like a reflection. How is there any truth to it? So if you have the face and the mirror and the light, if you take away any of the three, then the reflection goes away. No mirror, there's no face. No face, there's no reflection of the face. No light, there's no reflection of the face. You have to have all three. And the same with the lamplight or with anything else, with the image on the TV. If you have any of these, if the conditions for putting them together, which are probably actually very, very complex and more complex than we think about, if any of the conditions aren't there, then none of it will appear. So how is there any truth to it? How can we say that they really have true existence? So whether existent or not, things have no need of causes. So how would a cause be necessary for a thing that exists already? If something already exists, does it need a cause? It already exists, so it doesn't need a cause, right? However, if it doesn't exist, how would a cause be necessary? If something doesn't exist, it doesn't need a cause. Like, do rabbit horns need causes? They need a rabbit and a lot of CRISPR editing in the genome, I guess. And then it wouldn't be a rabbit. So even 1,000 million causes cannot transform the non-existent. So something does not exist. You can try to do billions of things to it and nothing is going to affect it. Because, why? Because it doesn't exist, right? So refuting that a thing can become nothing or that the non-existent can become a thing. So you might say that, well, it's the non-existent, is that things have two phases, that the phase of non-existence and existence. And so how in that phase of being non-existent, is it a thing? It's not. And what else would become a thing? What else could there be that would become a thing? If at the time of non-existence, a thing can't possibly exist, when can a thing come into being? And if a thing has not arisen, that non-existence does not vanish. So if at the point that something doesn't exist, at the point that something exists, the thing cannot exist, right? When it does not exist. So the point when a rabbit horn does not exist, there can never be a rabbit horn, right? So when can a thing come into being if that's the case? A rabbit horn can't come into being. So likewise, some future result or future cause that does not exist at the moment, how can it come into being? It does not exist. And if a thing has not arisen, the non-existence does not vanish. So any future phenomena that has not arisen does not exist. And until it somehow happens, then that non-existence does not, then it still is non-existent. That doesn't go away. Without removing non-existence, there's no chance for the thing to be, nor can a thing become non-existent, for it would therefore have two natures. So unless somehow, if you say that there's a thing that's a non-existent, you have your non-existent bouquet and you have your existent bouquet. So with a non-existent bouquet, you can't, it doesn't exist. So how can it come into being? There's nothing to come into being because there's nothing there. Then you have the existence bouquet. It doesn't come out of a non-existent bouquet. As you can tell, this is just a stupid trick I'm doing. I'm hiding it from you by bringing it down below my camera so no one else can see it. And then I bring it up before the camera so that everyone can see it. If the bouquet were down here and it truly did not exist and I lifted it up, no bouquet. Now, here's the bouquet. And now there's no bouquet. So is this bouquet both existent and non-existent? It can't be both. If it is here and then it goes away and it's a real thing, that would have sometimes be existent, sometimes non-existent. So it would have both the nature of existing and not existing. So it would have two natures, right?
What about flickering light?
Flickering light. What about flickering light?
There, when you see it, on, and then it goes off, and it's non-existent.
So what about flickering light where it's there when it's on and then it flickers and goes off and you don't see it? So when you see the flickering light, there are conditions that allow light to show up, to appear. When the light flickers and goes off, then there are no conditions for the light to be there. And it appears, and so it stops appearing. So this is how things appear. But is that real light? Is that light, enduring? Has it got a nature of its own? Or is it completely dependent on other conditions? So that flickering light is actually a very good example of this. When there are the conditions for the light, it's there. And when the conditions go away, then it's out. So if it's a flickering candle, then it's like the wind's blowing and the flame gets too small to make light. And then it comes back. Then the wind blows and it gets small, comes back. Then the wind blows again and it goes out entirely. When you have an electric light, you've got a bad connection somewhere and it kind of, as for whatever reason, rattles back and forth. So sometimes there's a connection, sometimes they're not connect and disconnect, and at those times the light shows or it doesn't show, but that's all because of causes and conditions. It's not like that light is real. That light doesn't have reality. It's totally dependent upon the causes and conditions. So the meaning of that is validly realized. So by doing this logic, what do you learn? The first thing is that no phenomena arise or cease. In this way, there is no cessation, nor is there any existent thing. Thus, at all times, all wanderers have not been born and do not cease. So there's no cessation, there's no existent thing. So all wanderers, all sentient beings who wander through the different realms of samsara, do not, in truth, have any birth, nor do they have any cessation. It's one moment has all the conditions for the next moment. It's the next connection has the conditions for the next moment. There's the illusion of someone being born in this world, being conceived in the womb, then appearing, being born, growing up, dying at some point, and moving on to the next world. But in actuality, there's no single real thing you could identify as that being that's been born. And there's nothing that stops when that being ceases. The causes and conditions keep producing the next thing the next thing in that continuum. Wandering beings are like dreams, like a banana tree when probed. Reaching nirvana and not reaching are not in suchness any different. So sentient beings are like dreams. We think we're real, but actually we're no different than the beings in our dreams. And ourselves, in our dreams, we dream of ourselves, we dream of sentient beings. In our dreams, we do all sorts of things. We dream of being in places we've never been. We can dream of flying, you can dream of going underwater, you can dream all sorts of different things. And all of that goes away when you wake up. Now you might remember it, but it's just a dream. So wandering beings are like dreams or like illusions. They're like a banana tree when probed. So like we spoke about yesterday, a banana tree, you peel away all the different layers of the stems of the leaves and there's nothing left. So in this way, reaching nirvana, becoming a Buddha, and not reaching it are not any different in suchness. In the actual nature of things, there's no difference between samsara and nirvana, they are the same in essence. It's just the difference, the only difference is our level of awareness. If you have no awareness or partial awareness, you're in samsara. When you have complete awareness of emptiness, then you are Buddha. So all we have to do is develop that awareness. And of course, it takes a while. On the one hand, it's pretty simple. As it says in the reciting the names of Manjushri. Now, this is not the actual quote. This is what they always quote for the reciting the names of Manjushri, but it's not the actual quote. So what everyone they always say when they quote it at this point is, a single moment makes the difference. Causal. Perfect Buddhahood in one instant. A single moment makes the difference. That's the quote that everyone quotes. So perfect Buddhahood in one instant. The moment you know, it's Buddhahood. A single moment makes the difference. Just that one instant makes the difference. The actual quote reads, discerning the distinctions of all instants, perfect Buddhahood in one instant. So it's a little bit different in the actual text, but everyone quotes it differently. So now we've come to the last section of the chapter. And because we've had only a few sessions to go through a lot of verses, I'm going to have to go through this a little bit quickly. So on the one hand, this last section of the chapter is not so intellectually difficult. And so everyone, I mean, most people, when they do it, and the commentaries are similar, they give very little commentary on it because on the one hand, it's pretty simple to understand. But it seems to me that actually this is more, in a sense, more important. I haven't heard anyone else saying it. This is my own personal thought, so it could be completely diluted. It probably is. That actually these verses in the chapter are among the most important verses. Because when we are thinking about emptiness, it's easy to make it into an intellectual game. When you're doing this, it's very easy to get stuck on the philosophy and not bring it into your heart, not make it something that really you are caring about, that really makes a difference. It becomes like a head game. It becomes a subject for something like writing a paper. You know, you have to do a class, you're going to write a paper, or maybe you want to, I mean, it could be anything. But it's not necessarily going to be a study that will really bring you true benefit. So you have to think about the reasons why are we engaging in this. And in Shantideva's work, the 9th chapter comes towards the end because you've already gone through the process of thinking about the benefits of bodhicitta, taking the bodhisattva vow, learning what you need to do to keep the bodhisattva vow, learning how to be diligent, practicing meditation, and in particular the meditations of the equality of self and other, and the exchanging self and other. In other words, the meditations on bodhicitta. And taking those to heart, so you meditate on these to such a point that you can, like, you're really ready for this. And then when you engage in the philosophical exam, it doesn't become just a merely head thing, because you've got a reason to do it. You know what you're doing it for. So it's not merely an intellectual exercise. This is hard. Now, usually we start looking at this material before we get to that point, because it's difficult to get to that point. But really, if we want to be able to take the intellectual, philosophical ideas that are described in the first part of the chapter, if we really want to make them work, we need to have the motivation of bodhicitta, and we need to keep that present in our minds as we listen to them, as we discuss the teachings, and as we practice them. So it's really important for this. And so that's why this section of the chapter, it teaches us how is this meditation going to be beneficial for us? And when it teaches us how this meditation is going to be beneficial for us, it's not saying, yeah, you're going to be able to write some papers and, maybe get a nice job out of it. It's not saying that. And you're going to be able to help others. Yeah, they're going to get some other ideas. They're going to be able to do something like that too. No, it's not talking about. That's not the benefit it's talking about. So here, when we talk about the last section, the benefits of the chapter, it has three different sections. So the first is transcending existence because of not being controlled by the afflictions. The afflictions don't have control over you, so you are able to free yourself from samsara or existence. And the second benefit is not falling into the extreme of peace because of compassion for those who have not realized emptiness. So when you have emptiness, and you truly have emptiness, then it's imbued with compassion. And because of that, then you aren't going to try to just enter the partial nirvana of the cessation of the arhats, where your own five aggregates temporarily cease, and you just rest in the absorption of cessation for eon after eon. Instead, you will have greater motivation to stay in samsara, to benefit sentient beings as much as you can. So that's the second benefit. And then the third benefit is the benefit of actually being able to protect all beings. Because, I mean, we sentient beings, such as ourselves, we try to do what we can to help each other, but we don't always know. People ask me questions and I try to give the best answer. And then they go to another lama and they get another answer and they tell me about it. And I often think, wow, that was better advice. And it usually was, because I'm just an ordinary person and they're speaking to other lamas who have much more experience and, are better teachers than me. And so someone like me, I don't feel like I can really do much. I try to do what I can, but I can't do much. So if we really want to be able to do something that helps, then we have to achieve Buddhahood ourselves. And so that is the benefit. So the first two of these are the benefit for yourself, and the last one is benefit for others. So the first bit is, not being moved by the 8 desirable concerns. You have the things that we want. You wanting to get things, wanting to get a good name, wanting to have pleasure, avoid pain, and so forth. With things which in this way are empty, what's there to get, what's there to lose? And who is there to be respected or denigrated, and by whom? Whence do pleasure and suffering come? What's to dislike and what to like? So these are the 8 worldly concerns that we speak about. Being pleased when you get something, displeased when you lose it. Pleased when you experience something pleasant, displeased when it's unpleasant. Pleased at being famous and well known, displeased at being unknown or being notorious, and pleased when you are praised, and displeased when you are reviled. So all of these, if everything is emptiness, then none of these make any difference, and you're not moved by the eight concerns. The other benefit is that this meditation on emptiness is the actual antidote for the cause of samsara, which is craving for the 3 realms. Why do we take rebirth? It's because we have craving. When you investigate in suchness, who is there that craves what's there to crave? We spoke about this yesterday, was it, in response to a question? When we take rebirth, the thing that makes you go back into, re-enter a womb is craving. What makes you go to any of the different realms of samsara is that you have craving for something. And so you rush off to somewhere without knowing what it is and find yourself. As I mentioned yesterday, for someone who's being reborn in the hells, they feel like they're being chased by or blown by cold winds. They're absolutely freezing. They see somewhere warm and they head for it, only to find that they're stuck in hell. And similarly, with being reborn in the animals, as reborn in the humans, it's being reborn out of lust for sexual desire. And so this craving. So what are you craving? Who's craving? What are you craving? Another being, another place, food? What are you craving? If you don't have craving, then you're interrupting that cycle of rebirth. And when you interrupt the cycle of rebirth out of craving, then you open up the chance that you can take rebirth out of compassion. You also see that everything is like space. When it's examined in this world of living beings, who here dies? What will become what once became, and what are family and friends? All those like me must understand that everything is just like space. So this is a benefit when you're seeing that everything is neutral, is like an illusion. So we have to understand that, emptiness and space are a little bit different. Space is kind of inert. Emptiness is not. Emptiness is like all the possibility of interdependence. And within that, there are the appearances of friends and family, loved ones, but they're all just like space in the sense that you cannot identify anything that is there. So the second part is talking about how when you have this realization, you see people who don't know it, and therefore you feel great compassion for them. Because you feel compassion, then you won't fall into the extreme of peace, that is, wanting to pass into the nirvana of an arhat. So you have compassion for those who act badly. The cause of strife and merriment make those who want pleasure for themselves become enraged or else exultant. They grieve, they toil, and they dispute. They slash and stab each other, doing misdeeds that make their lives arduous. So conflict, strife is conflict. Merriment is when you're doing things that make you happy. You want these, and this makes you go out of control. You want pleasure for yourselves, and you get angry about it or you exult about it. Either way, you end up doing horrible things as a result. When you see other people doing this, you feel compassion for them. Even those in the higher realms are not much better off. Returning to higher realms, consuming the many pleasures, they die and plunge to lower realms, intense, long-lasting agonies. So we see people, of course, you would see animals, and if we could actually see hungry ghosts or hell beings, we'd feel just overwhelming compassion for them. You might think that it's better off to be in the higher realms. Humans are okay, but like the gods, well, what happens when we get here? Look what's happening in our human realm now. We have figured out how to pillage the world's resources so much that we're poisoning our own world for ourselves and for our children, and ruining this beautiful planet that we're on, consuming the many pleasures. And then when we die, what's going to happen? We're acting out of greed, delusion. What's going to happen to us when we die? Not to mention, what are we going to leave for the future generations of this planet? So, and also, when you think about the higher realms, the realms of the gods spend eons enjoying this lovely life, doing absolutely nothing to ensure that they're going to have a good life next time around. And then they come to the moment of their deaths, and because they're gods, they have the divine eye, and they can see where they're going to be reborn. And they are just absolutely destroyed. It's like said to be even worse agony. The psychological agony of the hells is even worse agony than the worst agony of the hells. We can look at politicians whom we may or may not like, and we can think about them and what they're doing. They act terribly. They act like little children. We don't, especially in the United States at this point, we don't like what we see. We see people acting horribly. You see videos of people in responsible positions who are acting worse than children. We see all this on the news, and most of us, we get disgusted. We feel umbrage about it, but actually it's like, what are these people doing? Then when something goes wrong with them, they get extremely angry and petulant or whatever. And what suffering must be going on in their minds to be so angry and so upset all the time? How does it feel to be like that? We need to have compassion for them too. Even if they seem unable to change or whatever, we have to feel compassion. So in the United States, it's very clear, especially with the current political situation, but this is also in all other countries everywhere. When you have people who are in a good position who are abusing it, and then what's going to happen to them? And you look at what they do, the terrible, terrible tempers, and there's terrible suffering. All of samsara is suffering is the next section. So many abysses in existence, and there such thing as these aren't suchness. There too, they're incompatible in existence. There is no suchness. There, the incomparable and dreadful oceans of suffering are endless. So there's so many places that we can, terrible places to end up in existence, the many different hells or places that you are. And things there don't really exist. And they're incompatible with incompatible with achieving enlightenment. And people don't realize the nature of things. In existence, there is no suchness. There's nothing that really exists there in existence. And yet we experience terrible and incomparable, dreadful suffering while we are in samsara. As long as we keep acting in ways that perpetuate suffering, we are going to experience suffering. So even if we're born human, it's going to be hard to find such an opportunity where we have discernment and prajna like this. And there one has so little strength, and their life is so very short. There, in maintaining life and health and weariness from hunger and thirst, and sleep and in adversity, in the fruitless company of fools, life passes quickly, pointlessly. Discernment is so hard to find. So our lives are hard. They're short. They don't last long. I mean, even if we live 100 years, it's not a very long time. We spend so much time trying to maintain this lifetime that we forget to actually practice the Dharma. And it's so hard to find the discernment, the intelligence, the examination, to find the prajna that we need to find and develop. And even if you do, it's hard to keep it because there's so many, what do you say in Christian? You'd say so many Christianity, you'd say so many temptations, which are nothing other than our mind, actually. And there, what method could there be to stop the habits of distraction? There, too, the Maras try to make one fall into great lower realms, and their wrong paths are plentiful. It's difficult to get passed out. So these are all the problems that we have. We doubt things. We're not certain. Should we do? Should we not do? We don't commit. We don't really do the practice to the extent that we could. There are many wrong choices that we could make, and lots of temptations, lots of people saying, hey, come do something fun with me, when really you should be doing something else. It's hard to find these pleasures again, most hard to find a Buddha appearing, hard to give up the flood of afflictions, alas, the stream of suffering. Although the suffering is extreme, they do not see their own misery. Alas, it is most fitting to grieve for those deluged by suffering. I don't know that I can say much more. Just as some bathe repeatedly, but enter flames again and again, although they suffer terribly, they have the conceit that they are happy. Bathing repeatedly, but entering flames again and again is a reference to ascetic practices from ancient India. You do something that's hard, and then you take a bath. Feel a bit of relief. Then you go back into the flames, and then you go out and bathe again. It's just like that, pointless. They suffer terribly, but they have the conceit that they're happy. Likewise, they live with the pretense that they will never grow old or die, but first they're slain, and then there comes the terrible fall to lower realms. So no one ever, I mean, it's hard to accept the fact that we're aging and that we're going to die. People don't accept that until it's too late. And then what happens? So when will I bring peace to those ravaged by fires of suffering, by showering down from clouds of merit a rain of comforts to sustain them? So when you feel such compassion for sentient beings, you think about, what can you do? How can we be able to become like a great bodhisattva? There are stories in the sutras of the bodhisattvas going into the hells and showering down rains of everything that beings need and want. So what do we need to do to be able to do this for sentient beings? What does it mean to do that for sentient beings? How can we do that? When will I do it? And when will I, free of all focus, respectfully accumulate and then teach emptiness to those whose focus brings them ruin? So the focus is when you have like a focus of your mind, something that you want, something that you're fixated on, something that you think exists, that focus. And then when you let go of that and you see the interdependence, You're resting without any focus, without seeing anything as existing, as being there. So then when you do that, you can gather even greater accumulation of merit with great respect and great dedication. And then once you've done that, you gain realization, you develop that realization, then you're truly able to teach Dharma exactly as how people need. So you're teaching people who still have a focus. They still things, having a focus means perceiving things and grabbing on them, saying, this is it. It's like instead of like looking at the whole picture, it's like zooming in so that you just have that one little thing in focus. You're missing everything else. You think that one thing is everything, but it's not. So when you're out of focus, when you no longer have that focus, then that is like seeing emptiness, seeing the interdependent nature of all phenomena. So when will I be able to teach emptiness to those whose focus brings them ruin? So this completes the 9th chapter of the Way of the Bodhisattva. And so now, when did we start? Was it 2016 or 2017? Somewhere around back in that.
Before 17.
Before 2017.
17, I've been doing this. We did 1, 2, and 3.
In 2017, yeah. So we started in probably 2017. And so now 6 years later, we finally got through all 9 chapters. Some people have been here from the beginning. Some people have come in parts, but I hope that whichever parts people have had have been beneficial. Not that I mean, I do what I can, but I don't always feel like I give the best explanations of everything. But we try to do what we can. I mean, at this point, I'm certainly not free of focus. And so when I teach emptiness, it's probably not, it really definitely is not. I mean, I only have a kind of partial intellectual understanding. When I speak to other Khenpos, they have much greater understanding. They've studied the text much more than I have. They have greater understanding of the philosophy of it. And many of them also have greater true understanding of it. Myself, it's just a few words, and I didn't study as long as many other Khenpos. I don't have as much knowledge. I really, compared to other Khenpos, I really don't have the qualities of a Khenpo, but I try to do what I can to teach and explain a little bit. And of course, I work a little bit with the words, and when I translate a text, I kind of study it. I have to study it to translate it, and I do what I can. But for me, it's still all quite intellectual. But, I read these words, I think about the passage at the end of this chapter, and I find it very understanding. In fact, it's kind of weird for me to try to give an explanation as I read the words to you. I feel like I should just shut up, let Shantideva do the speaking. It's not necessary for me to add anything to it. But anyways, I hope that through this, that it has benefited all of you and everyone else who has been listening to whatever part of these teachings over the past several years. And I think that is it. Although this is difficult material, so maybe we should have time for a few more questions before we wrap up today. Are there any questions? Is there anything that... No one is moving either in person or over the Zoom. You see, the fewer questions we have, the sooner we can let those lobsters go. We have, for all those listening over Zoom, we are going to go from here and do a life release for lobsters. I believe that everyone in the area has raised something like well over $600 for lobsters. So that's going to save quite a number of sentient beings who would otherwise be boiled alive. So that's good. If there are no questions, then I've got a couple other things to say. The first thing, oh, Ted, you have a question.
I do. How would you recommend we use this, use this teaching, this book, just by reading a chapter at a time? You say contemplate and meditate. What's your suggestion about how to take advantage of
Right. So the question is, how do we make use of these teachings? How do we use this book? When I talk about saying we need to listen, contemplate, and meditate, how do you engage in this now? Basically, like, how do you combine it with your practice, I think, is your question. And so I think that reading this book, reading a chapter at a time, some people read it like a chapter a day. One of our Khenpos, Khenpo Chini, reads a chapter of the Way of the Bodhisattva every day, and then he recites the whole thing from memory. I can't remember if it's every week or every month. Just to review it, to keep it fresh. Once you memorize something, you have to keep it fresh, otherwise you're going to forget, right? So he does it by reciting it aloud frequently. And then when you meet him, you can sort of get the feeling that he's done. I mean, some of you know Khenpo Chini, some of you will meet Khenpo Chini if you go to Nepal and India. And so that's one way to do it. Also, this text is really, really beneficial for reading when whatever practice you're doing, because whatever practice you're doing, you need to have a good motivation. So reading it and contemplating it is essential, especially doing the Ngondro practices, many of you are. So reading it, thinking about it. Because when you're doing the Ngondro practice, you're taking the Bodhisattva vow every day, right? So you need to have that bodhicitta motivation. So if you want to know how to do it, it's good. If you want to have advice on what to do in your daily life, there's nothing better than this, especially the lines from the 6th chapter. If something can't be fixed, what need is there to be displeased? If something can be fixed, what good is it to, or excuse me, if something can be fixed, what need is there to be displeased? If something can't be fixed, what good is it to be displeased? If you're remembering that, that goes a long way to everything. So keeping it in mind is really helpful especially for everyone, lay people who have other things that you're doing. It's really beneficial. So reading it and contemplating it. So you can read it. You might find passages that are worth memorizing. A lot of people can memorize the first 3 chapters and the last chapter, the 4 chapters. That's a good way to do it. Or you can just read them as much as you can, remind yourself of them, always think about it. And sometimes you put it on your shelf for a little while and then you come back to it. And you come back to it again. So just repeatedly coming back to it. Sometimes you'll find another thing that complements it, that you read that for a while, then you come back to it and you see it in a slightly different way. So just touching in with it, reading it, contemplating it. The contemplations on emptiness, if you get some of the commentaries that are translated into English, the 2 that I know of that are actually very similar, actually there are more, but the 2 that are that I'm most familiar with are the one by Khenpo Kunzang Palden, The Nectar of Manjushri's Speech, and then Mipa Rinpoche's the Ketaka Jewel commentary on the 9th chapter. So reading those and thinking about them and reading a little bit at a time, and reading it 5 or 6 times to make sure you get it, and then going back and reading it. That's also helpful. Okay, so, one more question, yes.
Always talk about things arising, not arising, not existing, all this. And the question arose when you were talking about this in my mind. Do things arise in the Pure Lands? Is there arising there? Okay,
so the question is, we talk about how things arise or don't arise, they don't not arise, they don't arise from other, they don't arise from self, and so forth. Well, the question is, well, what about things in the Pure Land? The appearances in the Pure Realm are actually the same as our appearances in the impure realms, in that they arise from causes and conditions. And they're like illusions. I mean, when you go to the pure realm of Amitabha, then it says in the sutras and unlike then Karma Choephel Sukhavati prayer that the Buddha Amitabha has a body of light, that the ground is made of jewels and so forth. But it's like everything's arising out of the condition of the purity of your perceptions, your mind. And it's just coming out of different causes and conditions that are able to perpetuate themselves for longer than like a life in the human realm. But they're still essentially the same in being illusions. The main difference is that in the pure realms, you have to have pure vision to be there. And that pure vision means that you are seeing everything as being illusory and dreamlike, even as you experience it. You hear Amitabha teaching the Dharma, and yet that is also an illusion. It's not any different in that sense than what we're experiencing now. The difference is really in our own perception, how much obscuration we have. If we have only a little bit of obscuration, then like a bodhisattva, then you're able to go to the pure realms. If you're like us, ordinary beings, we have the thick obscurations, then we can't go to the pure realms. When you remove the obscurations, then you are able to go to the pure realms, which means that you're able to realize that the realm that we are in now is exactly the same. It's not like Sukhavati, we say it's in the realm in the west, in the direction of the setting sun beyond innumerably many worlds. This is the pure realm Sukhavati. But actually, it's when your mind has been purified of obscurations that you begin to see everything as the pure realm. That's really what the pure realm means. West is like a metaphor. So it's no different in that respect. It's also appearing, but empty at appearing. The difference is in you. Okay. All right. So I've gone a number of sessions, of course. We've mentioned Khenpo David Rinpoche's name a few times, but of course, he's no longer here with us in that same form. He hasn't come physically to Portland since 2010, I believe. Was that the year that he taught at was it 2009 or 2010 that he stayed and taught at the Holiday Inn? At any rate, it's been a long time since Rinpoche was here, and now that Rinpoche, that physical appearance that we knew as Rinpoche, is not going to come back. Hopefully, we pray that a new appearance of Rinpoche will come back, that he will send an emanation to this world soon. But we're here now, and what do we do in this situation here? Like, as the Portland Vajra Vidya Center, what do we do? How do we keep this alive? How do you keep the teachings going? And what do you, also importantly, what do you do in your own practice in this sort of period while we're waiting for whatever comes next, whoever comes next? So one of the things that we need to do is, of course, as we have been doing, as you've started doing in your prayer books now, you've put in the swift return prayer for Trungpa Rinpoche for him to come back. And it's really important for us to come back, for us to pray like this, because in order for a Buddha to come and actually appear to sentient being, that sentient being has to be able to perceive a Buddha, right? If you are unable to perceive a Buddha, there were people during the lifetime of the Buddha Shakyamuni who would see him but not perceive a Buddha, and they were not able to receive the teachings. So Rinpoche has the aspiration, I'm sure he has the aspiration to come back and teach all of us again, but for us to be able to recognize him means, and to realize, oh, we should listen to teachings, means that we have to do what we can to purify our own beings. It takes the Gyalwang Karmapa spoke about this before Rinpoche passed away in the last teaching he gave in the spring teachings. He talked about how there are two things that have to be there for a Buddha to appear. You have to have the aspiration of the Buddha, and you have to have the students accumulating merit. So we need to do what we can to practice, to accumulate merit in order to be able to bring Rinpoche back. And that includes especially making the aspirations, the swift return prayers, essentially asking Rinpoche, please come back as a Nirmanakaya soon. That Rinpoche that comes back is not going to be the same. I think sometimes people talk about, my friends who have had their lamas pass away and come back, talk about how they kind of knew it's the same, but it's not quite the same. Rinpoche will appear differently in his next lifetime. He was a great scholar in the lifetime that just finished. Who knows what it'll be in the next lifetime? This lifetime before that, he was a yogi. The lifetime, there was the sixth Trungpa Rinpoche was a great yogi. He went on a pilgrimage around a mountain, and it snowed, and he got stuck in a snowstorm. So he sat down and sat in meditation for many, many months before they came looking for him, by which time he was in the death meditation for months and months and months. And they came and they found him. He was still in the death meditation months after the snowstorm when he had died. And later they said that, oh, they should have made long life offerings to him. He might have come back because his body was still fresh. But when they picked him up and picked up the remains and brought them to the monastery, then he left the death meditation. So that was like a great yogi. The previous Trungpa Rinpoche also did things that seemed miraculous. But the ninth Trungpa Rinpoche didn't do so many things that seemed miraculous on the outside. In fact, he kind of hid his abilities. He often denied that he was actually even really a tulku of the Trungpa Rinpoche. And yet, when he passed away, he spent 3 days in the death meditation. So either he really was a tulku, or he's proof that if you put your mind to it and do the practice, you can achieve it too. You can do it too. No matter what, we need to do what we can to ask that he come back. And so part of that is that we're very fortunate that the Gyalwang Karmapa has not only written a swift return prayer, he's also written a Guru Yoga. There's the Guru Yoga by the Gyalwang Karmapa, and we have now a practice that we can do where you do the Guru Yoga, then there are the 3 prayers of calling the Guru, one by Jamgon Kongtrul that's well known, one less well known one, but also very beautiful one by the Shamar Rinpoche, and one that Trungpa Rinpoche himself wrote, these 3 prayers. And then we have like lots of prayers, almost 24 prayers, just under 24 prayers asking for Rinpoche to be reborn swiftly. And of course, when Rinpoche passed away, then a lot of us collaboratively did what we could to make these available to everyone over the internet and so forth, but also to make it easier for everyone. At the same time, we also put together a book. And this book is, unfortunately, it's heavy. It's hard to carry on the airplane. So here it is. We had both a Nepali edition and a Canadian edition. So this is one of the Canadian editions. Now I have 8 copies of it here. That I talked with Lama Pema before we went, and he thought it was really important that everyone here in Portland have copies of the books. So this is enough so that if you have, well, if most of you come, if many of you come to a practice session, this will be enough for you. It's 8 copies, so if there are more than 8 people, you'll have to share. But this is what we have for now. I'm really thinking that we need to try to find a way to make the book more available for everyone. I've got some ideas, but I'm not going to say anything aloud now, because if it doesn't work, then I would have said something that's not going to happen. But I do understand that lots of people would like to have their own personal copies of the book, and I think it would be really good. Basically, this book has the Guru Yoga, and then like we have the Guru Yoga at the beginning. And so this is the Guru Yoga. It has everything you need to do the practice. It has the prayers for calling the Guru from afar. And then in the back, it has all of the swift return prayers. But the ones in the very back, we only put with a translation, because otherwise this book would have been like much longer. So later on, we only have the Chinese and English translations. But this is the book. I have 8 copies now, and I assure you that I am thinking about ways that will make it available to everyone. So, Tracy, are you going to accept this on behalf of the center? Now is where everyone's supposed to clap your hands. And what else to say? I mean, that's the main thing. We need to, at this point, until Rinpoche comes back, we need to do what we can to make it possible for him to come back. Then there's also the issue of, well, what do you do in the Dharma Center to keep this center going? Because for Rinpoche to come back and to be able to teach in the future, he has to have places to come. So we need to do what we can. Not only that, this is a place that even people, of course, then there are several people of you here who may have never met Rinpoche. And so it's important that this place, because even people who haven't met Rinpoche in person can be affected by his activity. So Rinpoche's activity is not just, it doesn't have to be personal. It's got to go longer. And so that, whether it's going to happen like that or not, is up to us. So we need to do what we can to make sure that this center keeps going, and that people in the area can come in and find a place where they can practice the Dharma and learn the Dharma. And you all have been doing a wonderful job of that over the years. I mean, this center has been going for at least 2 decades. How long? 25 years now. That's really good. That's excellent. And, you know, among all of our Dharma centers, this is really a good center, but we need to keep it going. And so, I mean, I come here for a weekend or 2 a year, or 3, when I'm lucky. And when I'm here, I do what I can, but I also have a lot of responsibilities elsewhere. So I can't be here all the time. Of course, I'm happy to do everything I can. You know, if you guys need anything, let me know. I'll try to do what I can. But also it depends on you, on trying to keep the center going. So that depends on all of your efforts of working together, being harmonious. Rinpoche always spoke about this in the Dharma Center. What is the most important thing? It is to get along. If you guys get along, and you all are like this really good company of good Dharma friends, then when new people come in, then they're going to feel welcome. They're like, they can become a Dharma friend too, right? If there is kind of bickering and sort of tension, new people who come in are going to feel it, and the center is going to. So it's really important to work together. It's important to keep everything going, to be welcoming to people. I think that now it sounds, I mean, when people, I mean, of course, some types of programs are more appropriate for some practitioners than others. And that, of course, is necessary. You've got different people on different levels. So you have your Nundro group, you have your Wednesday night group and Monday group, and Sunday mornings. It's important to be as welcoming of people at all of these sessions as you can. Now, not everyone's going to be sort of up to speed at everything that's going on. When you come in, you're doing like a puja or a Vajrayana practice on like Wednesday night, and someone new shows up, Rinpoche would say that's okay. This is, you know, Rinpoche was always very open about it. Now, for someone who's brand new to come and do a Vajrayana practice and to go home and do it on their own, that's a slightly different matter. But to come and do it as part of the group, Rinpoche always thought that was fine. On Monday nights, you all are being, you know, welcoming of people. And then your Sunday evenings are kind of like an open house and people are showing up, which is really good. So please keep you're doing well, keep it going, and be open and friendly and get along as much as you can. And this is what will really keep the center going, because I hope to be able to come back and visit more. My own life is, of course, busy with all these different things, but I hope to be able to come back and help you as much as I can, because everyone thinks this is where I'm from, so might as well be. And for all of you listening online, many of you who are Mainers, I mean, people who don't live in Maine often don't realize how big the state of Maine is. So those of you who are Mainers, I know that it's always difficult to come in, but you all are always listening every time, you know. You're coming, and so I'm very glad to see you whichever part of the Pine Tree State you're in, or vacation land you are in. And then for all of you listening from Canada and from elsewhere, it's wonderful that you have taken the time to do this. And of course, there's nothing particular special about me or what I'm saying, but the fact that you are showing interest in the Dharma, that is actually what is much more important. I mean, than whatever, you know, whatever I'm saying. The fact that you are taking the time when you have other things to do, and you are devoting the time to Dharma practice is like it's excellent. It's what is most important. It's what's going to make the most meaning. There are many things that you can spend your time on and many obligations that you have in your lives, but to be able to take the time and to not only able physically, but also willing to take it is a really good sign. And so I appreciate all of you who are listening from elsewhere too. So thank you all very much. So with that, I guess I should thank everyone for all of this. And so now we have completed our teachings on the way of the Bodhisattva after what, 6 years. So we've got a lot of merit to dedicate. Oh, what is that? Where do I go? That's the wrong presentation. Oh, that's the wrong presentation. What do I need? What is this? That's the wrong presentation entirely. Oh, that's the one I want. So we will recite the long life prayer for the Gyeong Karmapa, and then we'll recite the prayer for Rinpoche's swift rebirth. And on the prayer for Rinpoche's swift rebirth, let's do it once in Tibetan and once in English, okay? And then we'll recite the Sukhavati prayers and so forth. So. Oja kunin jeran sur karma bhaja kun chenne chitu karma ja kun dun so kur karma ba urin rodum chenne shabden so Dene nam ta ching de wa che nang dong son je chu me ro ga re di si shi yong ge cham da do je chang ya me la me sha la cha za lo ting ren ko ve ja so ji rong wa nan yuen chu sin bung ge ze bai Nyan ta do kun jo be ba wo che pa chi je zen Lama terun den chen no chen chen che gi je si shi yon zen ma zen ten ro de ki mar me nom se da Jurbe de ze gon so ke te sambe lu to ra ye shin te sam gon de yura gon de ze zong de ge yang ten bo je ma seng La yan yu zhi su ka ji nam le dan pu ka ji dan zhi zhi yong le karma kam san yu shi dan zhi be jun san sir yi Kanyan beve chibuan yurchezo Omi shingne kaju lame totilgi kambu Chewa tabu yijeze lame tuje rangu de trube dasha Nyurdu Chawa Pache Ma Jandra Dandra Dunja Tsani Ponyar Chogi Nima Shunu Gashing Dende Songma Nirzi Lama Zasun Yatsu Dento Danda De don ze je be je da so ve ten ma de ba de ju de lo me ju je. So here, there's one line that has been edited that might be different from what you have in your handouts. I don't know which version you have in the handouts. There was an edit that was made after the original version, so just keep that in mind. It's in the second or the third to last stanza. Through the primal, pure, great bliss of the Dharma expanse and illusory play of appearance and emptiness unified, Vajra, you are the Lord of all existence and peace, incomparable Guru, I prostrate at your feet. Great hero who protects all helpless beings tormented in the deep oceans of samsara by the 100,000 sharks of afflictions and karma. So, Father, Venerable Guru, I miss you now. Think of us, kind Lord of Dharma. Look at us, O teacher, line of speech. The lamp of happiness for the teachings and beings has run out of oil. Now think of us with compassion. Your body of learning, venerability, and goodness grew to full strength. Your remain of listening, contemplation, and meditation touched the sky. Loud was your roar of teaching, debate, and composition. Lion of speech, we beg you, return soon. Come back soon, great being who preserves and spreads the golden thread of the fine traditions of teaching and practice of the Dapo Kaju among all the Kaju and the Karma Kamsang among all practice lineages. O hosts of Kaju lineages in the realm of Akanishta, come forth like sesame seeds bursting from their pod and invoke the venerable Guru's compassion. May the moon of his emanation rise soon. Glorious Mahakal and Mahakali, 72 haughty spirits and your messengers, be the protectors who bring the young son of the Supreme Nirmanakaya back to this realm. By the power of the truth, the oceans of gurus and three roots, and the fervent one-pointed faith of us disciples, may there be the unfailing cause and effect that fulfills all we ask for in its entirety. Yundu samba turin tonama sanje janze me koji kor deji ngozar badu me bai wajin she jare shinkander dani dine se pujur mata Kewa shingi parma chuparu deru jen nante shatong shom deke dagi mman pabadi choju sanje jansen tamje gi gemeru barjinji landu Tadyata Panjendriya Bodhanaye Svaha Choduja 세제 공소니 조제람 라기 주승계 사바 근조 숨라체 바보 야외템 pelürcige vansınrın gınahı Rögü sanje tovcurcu gezatamcı çitüte Dagi cüla min yörcü tane tsozote Tserine men yamdo pel tsendir sacının cürcü Namshi tsepe gyurmata devajinde gyurcü Kene peme kaçete lütende asangışo Chancı tomne cisido Trubero Ren Bajo Sunam de Tamje Sivani Pomne Ranan Panshene Yegana Shipa Lam Sive Tole Dro Okay, so thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing all of you soon.
Thank you, Khenpo.
Thank you, Khenpo.
Thank you, Khenpo.
Thank you, Khenpo.
Have the foresight to have been able to carry out this long project with us, and then in the middle of it to publish your own commentary and to leave behind all these recordings is really a tremendous gift that will continue giving. So thank you so much. And I think before you leave, some of us would just like to offer you a kata.
Okay.
And then we'll go down to the light please.
Okay, that actually reminds me of something. Because sometimes you all make donations that I usually return to you. And one thought, it might be a good idea on the part of your center to make an offering either towards Rinpoche's cremation or towards his reliquary stupa. To take some donations and maybe people add in a little bit more. And I know at least one of you is going. And to take this and then make an offering on the behalf of the Portland Vajra Vidya with the intention of Rinpoche returning soon and his teachings flourishing, especially here in Portland, Maine.
Thank you for that.
You saying that just reminded me. Of course, if you want to give katas, that's fine. But what's important is making that. So please, yes, sure.
Hi.
So those of you who are there who are offering katas virtually, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Shannon?
See you again.
Oh, so good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank all of you. Oh, one more. Susie. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.